Hey everyone, I'm Andy Wike,
I am Alan Britt.
and today we're going to talk about some of our recommendations for those who have maybe smoked some pipe tobaccos before, particularly aromatics, and are looking to jump into some other pipe tobacco families.
Yeah, aromatics are typically a good starting point. And you can get kind of boxed in though.
Yeah.
A lot of people will just stick with it because it's what they're familiar with. And when you get into the different families of Virginias and Vapors and Burleys and Englishes and Scottish blends, it's kind of overwhelming. So your good friends at Smoking Pipes are here to kind of lead you in the right direction.
So the first recommendation we're going to talk about is luxury twist flake. If you've smoked some aromatic blends before, like maybe some of the recommendations that we gave in a previous video, make sure to check that out if you haven't already. But if you're coming from a background in aromatics and you're looking to sort of get into the wider world of Virginia blends, I think luxury twist is just a really good sort of transition blend, as well as being an exceptional blend on its own.
The perfect crossover, in my opinion. So it is a Virginia flake. It's also just presentation-wise super unique.
Yeah.
With this compact and
Little square.
twisted square flake. It's what I'm smoking right now, and
It smells great.
it's phenomenal. It's a great Virginia blend that the tobacco is forward, but if you're coming from smoking aromatics, it still has this very light casing.
Yeah.
I would call it somewhere in the chocolatey realm. It reminds me, Shane Ireland always said that it reminded him of Almond Joy, and that resonated. I think that's the perfect comparison.
Yeah.
It's just so good. I lit this up, and I'm sure you got a good cackle. I haven't smoked luxury twist in a while, and
It's surprising every time you light it up. Yeah.
it's one of those. I'm like, I should smoke this more. It's a phenomenal blend, and it's an insanely good seller for people who've been smoking a pipe for decades.
It also ages very well.
Phenomenal. I just love luxury twists, and I think for someone who is transitioning and taking that next step out of aromatics, that it's one of the best options.
Yeah, and it's also, a lot of the other blends that we mentioned and that we will talk about in this video and we talked about in our previous video are all ribbon cuts. So what's cool about luxury twist is that it is a flake cut, so you do get exposure to that presentation style. But I think it's a very easy flake to work with. It rubs out pretty finely. It's easy to pack. The moisture content's good, so you won't really have to futz with it too much. You can just sort of load it and smoke it and enjoy it, and start developing your palate. All right, so the next blend is actually what I'm smoking in my little ROP pipe here. Sort of an unsung sleeper blend in C&D's portfolio, Pegasus.
Yeah, it's one of C&D's, I think, a quintessential Burley blend.
Yeah.
It's a Runowski blend from, the pre-Laudese days. It's been around for quite some time, and for good reason. People who just want an old school Burley blend that smokes great. It's not super fussy. It is made up of Burley Virginia Black Cab. It reminds me of the olden days of Burley blends, but with a slightly modern twist.
Yeah. I mean, so the Burleys come through. You get this sort of nuttiness. It's a drier sort of finish than something like luxury twist flake, for example. You're not going to get as much sweetness from Pegasus as you would that blend. But it does give you a really nice introduction to Burleys. Like, Burleys do smoke differently than Virginias. They have a different pH, and so your palate might react to them in different ways than others. There are some people who don't get tongue bite at all from Virginias, for example, but they will from Burleys just because of the actual pH of their mouth. Pegasus is a really great blend to just sort of experiment with the Burley family. Of course, there are Virginias and Black Cab in this as well, but a lot of the blend is made up of various Burley grades. So you get a nice sense of both the nicotine content, Burley's being one of the most potent of varietals, but also a lot of body from the Black Cav, a decent amount of sweetness from the Virginias. There's no real top note or anything like that, so it's a really good sort of introduction to the Burley family. From there, you can go and try things like Redburn or some of the more complex Burley mixtures, like in Burley Flake series, for example.
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning that it's one that I've heard Jeremy Reeves recommend for people getting into the C&D Burley portfolio. That Pegasus is a great starting point, and obviously not just Cornell and Deal, but for Burley blends as a whole, I think that stands true.
All right, Alan. So next up, we have one of the C&D blends that I first started with when I was really getting into the portfolio. Classic, always a very good seller for Cornell and Deal, and that's Bayou Morning.
It's one of my favorite categories. If I had to put myself in that box, vapors are the one. Something about the way.
What do you mean by vapors, just for the folks at home who don't know?
Yeah, a vapor would be a Virginia blend that also contains Perique, shortened vapor. And Bayou Morning is, I would say, the best-selling vapor in Cornell and Deal's portfolio. And I think it's just a perfect starting point where it contains 25% Perique. So, which is, for those of you who don't know, is a hefty portion.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
Yeah. So you're going to get the best representation of, or a very good representation of Perique to start your journey in that category. Perique, for me, has this, there's a dark fruit, we often call it stone fruit sweetness. But it also has these rich, earthy, loamy qualities to it. Umami is probably the best way to put it. It's just it's a process, a very unique process that results in a tobacco that is unlike any other.
Any other, yeah. And what's really nice about Bayou Morning too is that, you know, like all C&D blends that contain Perique, all of the Perique in Bayou Morning is actually from 31 Farms, Cornell and Deal's partner farms in Louisiana. So it's grown the traditional way, it's harvested the traditional way, it's barreled in the traditional way. Those guys just really follow all the traditional steps. And so I really think 31 Farms Perique is sort of the best in the industry. Like it's there's just so much flavor packed into that super dark leaf. I mean, there's stone fruits, the sort of almost like molasses, rum, like sweetness sort of thing. There's like a boozy quality to it.
Of course.
But Bayou Morning's great. There's a nice mix of bright Virginias in there as well as reds. So you kind of get to see how both of those varietals can enhance sweetness or lead down the sort of baked goods route. And then you're also getting that hefty portion of Perique to sort of really up the spiciness. It's a great blend to smoke first thing in the morning if you do have like a pretty high nicotine tolerance.
Yeah, make sure. If you don't, make sure you have
ribs for breakfast. Yeah. If you don't have a high nicotine tolerance, make sure to have ribs for breakfast, and then you can smoke your Bayou Morning. Moving along here, the next blend we're going to talk about is just sort of completely different from the other ones that we've talked about so far. That's Cornell and Deal's Star of the East. Like all of these, it's available in bulk. You could also find it in a flake format, Star of the East Flake. It is just a really good representation of what Latakia can do, I think.
Yeah, we're venturing into English territory with these next two, which can often be polarizing for new pipe smokers. I didn't get it at first.
Yeah.
But it's something you definitely should try. Some people love it immediately. Some people, it takes some time to kind of grow an affinity for it. But Star of the East, much like we spoke about with Bayou Morning, it's going to be a really good representation and let you find out very quickly if you enjoy Latakia.
Of all the blends on the table, Star of the East contains the most Latakia as a percentage. It actually makes up like around 50% of the blend. This term gets thrown out a lot in the industry and in the community, just like the idea of lat bombs, right? And I don't think it's ever really meant as a negative connotation. Right. It's just that like when one component makes up 50% of the blend, that is really sort of the prominent note that you get. So with Star of the East, it is very Latakia forward. So you're getting this really sort of interesting, smoky, incense-like quality to it.
I think that's kind of enhanced too. There's a good portion of Turkish tobaccos
Yep.
in Star of the East, and hence the name.
Yep.
It's really, it represents that style of Latakia and Oriental blend, but dominated by the Latakia, whereas more traditional Englishes would be more Virginia forward.
Oriental with a little bit of Lat.
Right.
But yeah, so if you're interested in getting into English blends as a family, I think particularly if you find things in Greg Pease's portfolio, for example, that seem interesting to you, like Quiet Nights or Chelsea Morning, like those sorts of things. Star of the East is a really great introduction, available in bulk, that you can sort of get in 1 ounces all the way up to 16 and sort of try your palate against Latakia, the super smoky incense-like leaf. All right, and then the last entry here is sort of another sort of unsung hero of C&D's portfolio.
Right.
It's a blend that, like, for those who know, they'll cellar it deep. You might not have ever tried it before just because it's, not one of the ones that's talked about all over the place. So Mountain Camp is the blend that we're talking about. It's another English blend, but it sort of takes a very different direction than Star of the East. Rather than leading with a 50% portion of Latakia, the overall balance here is a bit more diversified. So you've got some really nice Virginia grades in there. You've got Black Cavendish. You have a good bit of Turkish leaf, Latakia, but then also Perique and Burley.
It's often referred to as a Scottish style blend.
Yeah.
Which, depending on who you are, that's for another video. Your definition can change on that, but we're going to call it a Scottish style blend.
Yeah, I think whether you're talking about the inclusion of Black Cavendish or the inclusion of Perique, it sort of fits those definitions. It's just a really good example of how some of these other components that we've talked about can come together in different percentages and yield a completely different experience.
Yeah.
So Mountain Camp, you're going to get the spiciness from the Perique. It won't be as noticeable as Bayou Morning, for example, but it's still there. You're going to get a good bit of body and nicotine from the Burleys. The Black Cavendish really helps carry everything through the smoke. And there is some Latakia, of course, and so you do get that smoky character, that incense-like quality, but it's all sort of over this foundation of really solid Virginia grades and Oriental.
Yeah, I think it's a great representation of blending prowess and balance.
Yes.
As I use this term lovingly, but I often find myself drawn to these kitchen sink style blends where, it has a list of components like this, and Mad Fiddler, Flake, HU, Nashville County are just ones that I personally love and go to often. Mountain Camp is going to be a great first venture into that style of blend.
Oh, yeah. And it's nice to enjoy any time of the day. I think, there's an old thing where it's like, if Bayou Night is meant to be smoked in the wee evening hours, Mountain Camp is best taken on a day fishing.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit lighter in percentage of Latakia and Perique, but it does have that same sort of experience, but just with a different sort of balance, more well-suited to all-day smoking, I think.
So these are 5 recommendations for when you're venturing outside of that first ventures into aromatics and just kind of want to try different styles of pipe tobacco that may sound intimidating from the outside, but as always, your good friends at Smoking Pipes are here to guide you. And as always, you are more than welcome to call our customer service, shoot us an email. We reply almost instantly if it's during work hours. 5
great blends, all available in bulk. You can get them from 1 ounces all the way to 16. Give them a try, and then from there you can sort of branch out into other things. If you like Bayou Morning, there's a whole plethora of Virginia Periques that you can try.
Yeah.
Same with Star of the East, Mountain Camp on the English side. Make sure to give them a try and call our friend Alan here if you guys need any help. Make sure to like and subscribe if you liked this video and you want to see more like it. Otherwise, we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks so much.